The last 48 years for me to get to midlife has been this unraveling and this, I am more clear now on who I am and where I'm going than I've ever been. I was the center of a lot of bullying as a kid. I was brutalized for 20 years. Some of the most horrific sexual harassment that the people that I have opened up to around it have just been like, I can't believe you survived. I'm ashamed that I never asked for help. Yeah, I did it everyone else's ways, and I followed the rule book. I wore the outfits. I did all the things, and it still wasn't right for me. So how now can I just stand up and exclaim, no, this is actually who I am, and I don't really give a fuck what you think. So you're gonna leave your $350,000 job or whatever it was that I was making at the time, and then you're gonna become a yoga teacher and literally make $15 a class? And we're like, yeah, I think so. One of the biggest things that I want to do in my life is make sure people feel valued and seen. And when women adventure together, beautiful things happen. He's like, you're going to be slinging free smoothies on the sidewalk in front of Exeter because A, nobody is going to know what you're talking about. Turmeric lattes and fat coffee and all this stuff. No one's going to come in, and you're going to have to get them in here some way, shape, or form. Thank God the first day we opened, 100 people showed up, and it was off to the races from there.
Welcome to Seacoast Stories, a podcast about the people, businesses, and newsmakers that make the Seacoast an American hidden gem. I'm Troy Farkas, and on today's episode, part one of a two-part conversation with Jennifer Wilder, the boss babe owner of LANEY LU, Ginger Fox Bakery, and perhaps the top voice among all female entrepreneurs on the Seacoast. Jennifer Wilder, formerly known as Jennifer DeRogers, is a trailblazer. 10 years ago, she opened LANEY LU in downtown Exeter. And when everyone around Jen assured her that no one here would want West Coast favorites like turmeric lattes, for example, Jen insisted on moving forward anyway with a first-of-its-kind restaurant here on the Seacoast. Jen's initial business plan for LANEY LU called for 30 customers per day. She kept it modest because she was simultaneously building a different brand, Wild Adventurous Life, which centered on bringing women together for epic experiences. But after day one, when 100 curious customers walked through those Exeter doors, Jen quickly learned her food business would require far more energy than perhaps she had hoped it would. In fact, she tells me today LANEY LU was a departure from the true mission at hand, which for the last 15 years has been to help women live more confidently, vibrantly, and adventurously. And while simultaneously building her restaurant empire, which now includes a Portsmouth LANEY LU, plus Ginger Fox Baking and Stratum, Jen became a force in the area, earning 7 figures, selling out live events, speaking at conferences, coaching other business owners, building a sizable social media following, and becoming a role model for other female business owners on the Seacoast. If you're in touch with the Seacoast business scene, which you probably are if you're listening to this podcast, then you likely know all this. But what you don't know about Jen is the life she lived before starting LANEY LU 10 years ago. Before ever stepping foot in the restaurant business, Jen worked for 20 years in the manufacturing industry after having studied engineering in college. And in the late 90s and 2000s, Jen was often the only woman in these rooms, which, as you might imagine, didn't lead to good outcomes. You'll learn more about what she experienced in those rooms on today's episode, which she opens up about for the first time ever on a podcast. We'll also discuss Jen's Vermont upbringing, the health issues that finally led her to leave the corporate world, her stint as a yoga teacher, the rapid growth of LANEY LU, why she's devoted her life to helping women feel heard, and so much more. Today's episode is presented by Jen Backus Photography and Holistic and Hormonal, and it's a podcast I've been looking forward to for a very long time. Personally, both LANEY LU and Jen mean a lot to me and the very fabric of this show. and I'm very excited for you all to hear this interview, which for the first time will be broken out across 2 separate episodes. In part 2 next time, we'll get into the 2 big moves Jen has made this year, the incredibly tough decision to close LANEY LU Exeter, and officially changing her name to Jennifer Wilder. But for now, here's part 1 of the Jen Wilder story, which begins back in the 1980s when she was a little girl in Vermont.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for, I guess, describing me in that way, because I am on a mission to really show up as authentically as possible as who I am. And I'm sure that will be a reoccurring theme in today's podcast. But most people will describe me as, I hate to say this, but the boss babe, the power suit wearer, the whatever. And while there is that part of me, like I am really an adventuress at heart. And I really want that fun side, that warmth to come through in everything that I do. So thank you for that. I grew up in a small town called Lyndonville in northern Vermont. It's basically Canada, almost New Hampshire. And it is one of the most magical little spots on the earth. And I'm very grateful to have grown up there.
So what were you doing on a day-to-day basis as a kid?
I think I was learning how to be an overachiever and how to do absolutely as much as I could at the highest level that I possibly could. And I just always had a completely stacked schedule. Of course, as a kid, I had no idea that that's what I was actually doing. It seemed like normal to me to be in that place. So when I was in high school, I was doing multiple sports. I was studying dance. I was studying music. I was studying language. I did theater in the summers. I had 2 jobs and I felt like I did all of those things at a very high level, which is a good thing and a bad thing, because I think I programmed myself to be really good at running at a fast rate and have a lot of resilience and capability to do that, but it's not always the best way to be.
Right. Yes. You definitely have a high capacity for work that has been very evident. So I'm stereotyping about small town Vermont. I imagine very picturesque, scenic, lots of outdoorsy things happening. Were you getting into those kinds of activities back then?
Yeah, it was incredible. I mean, I started skiing at 3. I got my first mountain bike when I was 14. I would trail run. I would run on the road. For me, I like to be outside as much as possible. I grew up in a neighborhood full of boys. So as a small kid, I think that's actually one of the reasons why my parents put me in dance when I was 3 is I was surrounded by mostly boys in the neighborhood and I wanted to be out playing with them. So if I saw a pickup game of whatever, wiffle ball or kickball or kick the can. I don't know if anyone knows kick the can, but it's the most magical game in the world. But, we would have apple fights and shoot BB guns. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to build little mud dams and jump my bike over it. And I think they were like, we need to make sure she's still a girl. So I had lots of Barbies and dolls, but I really wanted to be outside with the boys.
Wait, are apple fights just throwing apples at each other?
Oh, heck yeah. And ruthless. But yeah, we would escape into the woods and, navigate the valleys into the hills of Vermont. And it felt like we were so far away from home. And it's that quintessential, when you hear your dad whistle at dark, you come home and you have dinner as a family every single night.
What a lovely time and what a lovely childhood. And now I know I heard a previous podcast that you'd been on that at some point along the way, you had a teacher of yours present 3 career options to you when you were in high school, I believe: doctor, lawyer, or engineer. You opted to go down the engineer route at a time when I'm sure, especially that back then, there were not too many female engineers around. So why did you want to go down that route?
Yeah, it's funny. I actually didn't really have a lot of sort of career people in my life. I mean, my dad was a blue collar guy. My mom, I think, set a great example of what it was like to be a woman in business because she started a business when I was 5. But of course, it's not until the last 10 years that I understand how she opened the door to, feeling very competent and very capable of being a woman in business. But other than that, there was only really one other person that was in my world. And she actually was a lawyer. And I just saw her a couple of weeks ago. And I said to her, you have no idea the impact that you had on my life, because to me, you were this sophisticated professional woman that I would see in these beautiful clothes. And I knew that you were doing big things. And so for me, I was like, you really paved the way for me to understand like that's possible for me. But other than that, no, it was mostly men that I saw doing, engineering or manufacturing or things like that. So I'm not exactly sure how I stepped down that pathway other than being told, look, you're a super smart kid, you're really capable, and you should go to college. And I was the first in my family to go to school on both sides of my family. So that was, I just felt like I was, I guess, paving a new road the whole time. Yeah.
Did you ever have dreams growing up of owning your own business one day?
I think I thought I was going to be like a senior executive doing something, which I thought was going to be more on the commercial construction side, which is why I went to school for architectural engineering. But I thought I would go more into like corporate, and that I would find a job and I would stay in a job because that's what people in Northern Vermont do. You get a job, you stay, you make sure that you have some sort of retirement plan and pension plan, and you celebrate that. And I remember the first job I got working for my dad's company as an intern, I negotiated a 401k. And I remember feeling like at 19, like I've done it, I've made it. And now I just got to ride this out till 65 and life is going to be good. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you would then go on to spend 20 years in engineering, manufacturing, eventually the plastics industry. We don't need to go in the weeds of what you were doing throughout this time, but I guess big picture, what did you enjoy about this work that kept you in it for so long? Yeah,
there are some really compelling stories. I wouldn't really take the time back. I would definitely do it differently. Some of the most amazing things, the ones that really stick out to me are I got to travel all over the world. And most of that time, I was the youngest person in the room. Most of that time, I was the only woman in the room. And some of those stories are really funny. So Kimberly Clark, for instance, was one of our customers. We were working on some pretty cutting edge overmolding technology. And in this room were 10 very talented executives talking about the grip on a tampon. And I just remember thinking, what a funny situation I have got myself into, because I am the woman that is selling the equipment to them to be able to make the product that they're talking about. So I don't have really any stake in the game on the design other than the fact that I'm the only woman in the room. And I just thought it was hilarious because I'm just sort of sitting there nodding my head, and they're all like going through like, I don't know, the pedal on that is just really not quite right. And just thinking, you guys don't know what the hell you're talking about. But okay. So there's a lot of really funny stories. Yeah.
Wow. So being the only woman in the room oftentimes, how is that experience for you?
I wish I could say by percentage what percentage was good versus what percentage was maybe not so good. There was a high percentage of not so good. And I've had to do a lot of work post corporate. This is something that I don't talk about and haven't talked about. And I'm just not exactly sure what my platform is on it and how I should show up around it. But I was brutalized for 20 years. Some of the most horrific sexual harassment that the people that I have opened up to around it have just been like, I can't believe you survived. Like, I can't believe you didn't leave. I can't believe you didn't elevate. I can't believe you didn't, cry for help. And I also kind of can't believe it in a way. I can, because that's what you had to do to survive. That was what was expected of me. But in a lot of ways, I'm ashamed that I never asked for help, or that I never elevated it, or demanded something better for myself. And so I've had to do a lot of, I guess we'll just call it forgiving. I've had to forgive myself that I didn't stand up and speak for myself. And I've had to ask myself why. And most of it is just survival. You're just not safe. And if you elevate and cry wolf, it's not crying wolf, but you elevate and say, hey, this senior vice president that is one step away from being the CEO of this company, he is flat out underpaying me. He has requested that I have sex with him in order to get a bonus or a raise or an elevated title. And I've had to, fight that off. And so I'm thankful to say that I didn't do those things, but the number of times that was laid out to me as my option for growth is sad and staggering and sickening. So what I found is I was the woman that was bumping up from every glass ceiling saying, I'm never going to get anywhere here unless I leave the company and keep trying to find a company that will allow me to be me, or I just need to leave the industry. And ultimately, I spent 20 years learning to not be a woman. And so hence the boss baby power suit thing, and you can tell I've done a lot of work on trying to understand myself and the patterns that I've created. And those are all survival techniques.
What do you mean you spent 20 years not trying to be a woman?
So I remember very well the first time I wore a skirt to work. And then I was like, I will never do that again. And then I changed jobs, changed roles, kind of changed offices within the company. I remember trying it again and getting into the backseat of a vehicle and someone saying, it would be nice if you could just leave your knees open a little bit further. And then I was like, okay, now I'm not going to wear the skirt thing. I tried that again.
Wow.
That didn't work for me. The funny thing is that I will say the first company that I worked for out of college, I was there for 9 years. So many beautiful things about this company centered around health and wellness, bold goals, like tenements and value systems that I have absorbed into myself, and to see the way that generally speaking, they took care of their people. They just didn't take care of me or probably the women in general, but there weren't very many of us. But there were a lot of good things about that company. But when I left that company, I walked in, I was called in, I was living here and working out of what was called the Boston office. Headquarters was in Toronto. And the president CEO called me to his office. So I flew all the way to Toronto to meet with him. We sat in his private office. And he just said, between you and me and the four walls, I don't understand why you never got anywhere other than the fact that you're a woman. This is his exact words. But I wore a goddamn skirt to that meeting for a reason, because I wanted him to see me as a woman that day. It's like, I am a woman, but my hair was as short as yours. I wore the suit so that I could kind of fade to the background a little bit.
Wow. Thank you for sharing those stories. I'm sorry that you had to go through that. Today, if those things were to happen to you or any woman in the workplace today, I feel like women are way more empowered to act and push back today. But I mean, when you're going through this is what, early 2000s?
Yeah. So I got into the industry technically in 95, 96, working all through college. That's where it kind of started. And insane stories about what that was like for me. But then I pushed to get into another company. And so that was 99. And I left the industry in technically 2013, 2014.
So a totally different environment when one, you're the only woman in the room, and two, women aren't really speaking up for themselves yet.
Yes. And yes, I think it's a scary place too, because you're going to lose your job. It's not like you're going to be like, oh, you're smart and capable. And I can see how, I was running some of the biggest clients in the globe for my company, and my company was the top player of the industry. So what I was doing for the company was tremendous. And I was being paid significantly less, oftentimes like 35, 40, 45% what my counterparts were being paid. Those were tough things to be okay with. And well, ultimately I wasn't okay with it, but I just thought someday maybe it will change. And then you just get to a point where you realize it's really not going to change. Yeah.
How do those experiences that you had in that past life of yours really shape who you are today and what you do and the women that you try to serve on the Seacoast and beyond? Well,
women deserve to make as much money as they can possibly make. And that is one thing. They deserve to see themselves as belonging in any room that they want to be in. They can accomplish their biggest, wildest, boldest goals, and there's no one that should hold them back from that, especially themselves. But, especially someone else who's just feeling maybe a little bit intimidated by that. Why? I can't explain it. It's deeper than us. It's bigger than us. But I really want to see women just be their biggest versions of themselves and their most authentic. Mm-hmm.
And we'll get into some of the ways that you're doing that later on. But all right, so you're in the plastics world. You are making 30% less than your male counterparts, but you were still making a pretty sizable salary. So you've got a good, successful life, that at least so it appears on the outside. But it's my understanding at some point you didn't necessarily feel that way on the inside.
Yeah. So my final company, I had gotten myself to a situation where the company I was working for was a smaller entity within a large group. So it was a multi-billion-dollar company, but this sister company, if you will, was much smaller. So when I joined the company, it was approximately 26 million. When I left, it was my goal to grow the business. When I left, we were approximately 54 million. So that was growth that they saw based on my external business development endeavors. And so clearly I was very successful. I had, learned my lesson. So I negotiated a sizable commission rate for that. And so I was able to take even fractions of a percent on sales of that level afforded me a pretty good salary. So I think I had essentially fixed some of the wrongs that I had lived through in the previous company. But what I did notice in that company was I was actually sort of pinpointing like, hey, we could be better culturally. It doesn't really seem like people really like each other here. There's a lot of just grunting in the hallways. Like, I think there's more opportunity here. There are a lot of really fantastic people here. There's an opportunity to create stronger teams. And so I started proposing essentially like a chief culture officer or something like that. I don't know what the job was that I had. Chief happiness officer, essentially. But it was like too soft. It's too soft for that world. Like, they were not ready for it. Again, 150 guys, and basically me, anyone that was a woman was in some sort of admin position. And that was when I really figured out I'm not going to be able to really have an impact on a company or a company environment like I want to have. And so culture development obviously is at the forefront of so much of what we do at LANEY LU. So yeah, it's that seed started getting planted way back in probably 2010, something like that. Yeah.
So they didn't take you seriously when you proposed the chief cultural...
It was kind of like, why bother? We didn't even have an HR person.
Oh, wow.
They were like, we don't need that. Like, why would we need that? I'm like, well, you kind of need more than just the president of the company to go to, you know, like shit does happen. And I was like, well, if you're not willing to... I saw the bottom line. I saw the P&Ls. I know we were doing well. So if you're not willing to reinvest your money into the softer side of the company, then there's really no room for me and my ideas here.
So 2010, you start reconsidering the direction that you're going into as you were thinking about different paths you could go down. What was coming to mind for you? Well,
kind of had an interesting thing happen where out of nowhere, I started feeling ill.
Coming up, how a health scare and yoga teacher training inspired Jen to change course, and how Jen's personal brand blows up. All of that next, but first, women's health is often a theme on this show, and more specifically, women's hormones. Not necessarily my zone of genius, but they certainly are for Dr. Whitney Elsesser of Holistic and Hormonal. Dr. Elsesser is a doctor of nursing practice and certified nurse midwife who specializes in hormone health, fertility, and functional medicine. And her practice, named Holistic and Hormonal, is a virtual women's health and hormone-focused practice which services women in New Hampshire and Maine. Obviously, I don't know much about all of this, but I can tell you that talk about hormones is showing up all over my algorithms these days. I don't know what that says about me, but several previous guests have told me how important it is to keep hormones in check, so I think you should go with me here. With her functional medicine approach, Dr. Elsesser helps women get to the root cause of their issues. Instead of taking a pill for your mood swings, maybe you just need to balance your hormones. And she will help coach you through the safest ways to do that. Ditto for addressing fertility struggles, weight challenges, and more. So ladies, or men for the ladies in your life, Dr. Elsesser is offering our listeners free lab consultations so you can get to the root cause of what is going on. Just visit holisticandhormonal.org and on the contact page, write the word hormones, and she'll get in touch with you for further details. Website link in the show notes. Thank you, Holistic and Hormonal, for supporting the show. And now back to Jen Wilder and the health problems she experiences prior to opening Laney and Lu.
I was having just really interesting, what I call kidney pain. It was unexplainable. I went in and out of the doctors for a period of weeks. No one could sort it out. And so I just said to the doctors, after a significant amount of poking and prodding, I said, and I think I'm going to try to change my diet. And they thought I was a little bit crazy. And I had picked up a book about the wisdom of women's bodies by Christiane Northrup, and she talks a lot about inflammatory foods. So I was like, I'm going to give this a shot. No one else knows what the heck's going on. And ultimately now I think that I've learned enough about energetics, and the body has a way of telling you when it needs something different. And so ultimately, I think my body was saying, okay, maybe you are eating some foods that don't necessarily agree with you, but I was always pretty healthy, very mindful, always an athlete. So there were a lot of things that I was doing correctly. And I think my body was just like, I'm going to bump this up a little bit, make this a little bit louder so you'll listen and really start to think about what's happening in your heart, what's happening in your head. You're completely out of alignment with who you are meant to be. And so that just kind of transformation that I felt with food, it just opened my eyes, and I started going to yoga more. And then all of a sudden yoga teacher training. And I was asked, what is a truth that you're telling yourself that is not really the truth? And my statement was, my corporate career is directly tied to my ability to be successful and my definition of success. And it's just not true. So that was when I decided, literally in that moment, like, I'm making a change. I don't know what that looks like. I think I'm going to go somewhere in the, realm of holistic wellness. And that was very cutting edge at the time. So there weren't, health coaches running around all over the place. There weren't yoga teachers everywhere. It was just like, wow, this feels very reckless. So I'm sorry, let me get this straight. So you're going to leave your $350,000 job or whatever it was that I was making at the time, and then you're going to become a yoga teacher and literally make $15 a class? And we're like, yeah, I think so. I think so.
How scary was that?
It was really scary. But of course, like, I have, the inability to be that flippant about life. So of course, I've started saving every penny that I possibly could. I simplified my life. I just bolstered my bank account to get ready for the change. And when I knew, when I got to a place where I felt like I could be comfortable and I could live for a year or so on my savings, then I went for it.
That position you found yourself in is one that's a lot of ourselves find us in. I was just in this position just a couple months ago, and I'm sure a lot of people listening can relate to that point where they want to make a change from their past life. They're out of alignment. Maybe things are popping up in their bodies like it did for you once upon a time. They don't quite know where to go. They don't know how to get over the hump. They don't know how to figure it out. They don't know how to leave security and stability, which is a very real thing, especially in this part of the country that's very expensive. Yeah. What would you say to someone who finds themselves in that 1 foot in, 1 foot out, dreaming of a better life, doesn't necessarily have the confidence or the bravery to take that step? Yeah.
I mean, I always say you do not have to blow up your life. If your life is relatively good, you don't need to blow up your life to go in a different direction. You can systematically make steps to get there. Sometimes life will blow itself up, so, I don't know if it's okay for me to bring this up, and I don't know the whole story, but maybe for you, Spotify laying you off was like that kick in the butt that you needed. Sometimes the world would do the work for you.
For sure.
Right? Sometimes it doesn't. And so for me, it didn't really. I could have stayed there probably forever and suffered in that corporate job and probably been a lot richer than I am now. Not probably, definitely. But I'm a happier, more aligned person than I've ever been. And that's what I know. It's like the last 48 years for me to get to midlife has been this unraveling, and this, I am more clear now on who I am and where I'm going than I've ever been. And that is a very powerful position to be in. That. Yeah.
Selfishly, I have to ask, why did you do yoga teacher training?
Well, so I'm a dancer by training, but then I'm an engineer, right? So I would in class, like be looking around like, how is she doing that half moon? And I would ask the teacher afterwards, can you help me with my alignment? Like, it's not quite working for me. I'm not able to get into the pose, whatever it may be. And so there was a lot of striving maybe happening in yoga, but I was at Power Yoga, so they didn't mind that anyway. So then she just said, I think if you go to teacher training, it will open up you to like greater levels of understanding of the mechanics of yoga. So now we're just talking about the practice of the asana itself. And that's fine.
The physical movements.
Yes. But when I got into yoga teacher training and we were all of a sudden doing the work of Byron Katie, like day one, and we were meditating and we were doing all the things, I was like, okay, this is way more. So now you're learning about the limbs of yoga.
Right.
And I just was like tapping into, I think, areas of myself that I knew were there, but I hadn't really lit out yet.
Yeah. It's a transformative experience, really, that 200-hour training. It's very cliche, but it's actually kind of real. At some point, you end up crying on the mat with the people around you because you're trapped in a room for long periods of time, kind of being forced to do some introspection that perhaps you otherwise never would not have done.
Well, yeah, I think most of us, especially someone like myself that was living a fairly traditional life, like we're not asked to do this deep work and deep exploration for, like you just said, 8 hours a day, but now let's do it one, entire weekend, every weekend for every month for the next, 8 months or something like that. And you're like, whew, it's a lot of work. There's a lot of time. And then of course it bleeds over into other aspects of your life and you find yourself journaling or meditating at home or doing all these things that, at least for me, I was not doing those things beforehand. Yeah.
And you did go on to teach a little bit, right?
Oh my God, I loved teaching. Yeah, I taught for a handful of years probably.
Wow.
Yeah.
We got to get you back.
I do. I was kind of curious. I'm like, do I need to go back and get some sort of recertification? I just want to ask, but that's me following the rules, I'm sure. But I loved it. And I had a very strong following and a very, I wanted people to work, but I wanted them to work on the mat physically so that they could see what they were capable of. And that didn't actually always, that's a whole nother story. Maybe we shouldn't go there because it didn't always work for the studio owners. Because they'd be like, you're not doing it our way. I'm like, well, I know my way's working.
Yeah.
And my classes are full. So I'm not exactly sure why you can't see that.
Well, we got to get you back teaching. I need to take a Jen Wilder class.
Yes.
So yoga teaching for $15 an hour was part of the career transformation that you were making 2010, 11-ish time. I mean, you didn't really have a plan, but I know you did go on to start an adventure-y, outdoorsy brand, right?
Yeah. So, one of the things that came up for me in yoga teacher training, I guess like now that you've said this, I'm like, I think we have our timing off a little bit because it was probably 2012 that I took yoga teacher training. And then, of course, LANEY and LU didn't come around until September of 2015. So it was like 3 years of this process of becoming probably the healthiest version of myself, being really, really dedicated to my yoga practice, taking more time to adventure and understand really what that meant to me. And that was what was coming up for me. And I was doing all this personal development stuff. I was going to Tony Robbins and I got my first coach and just really digging in. And like when someone asks you, close your eyes and what are the words that just start popping up? Those are the words you need to listen to. Mm-hmm. And so adventure would come up for me a lot, courage, freedom, etc. And so I'm like, okay, I can do this and I can make an impact. Like I can make an impact and do community curation and development. I can do that my way. I don't need to do it in the plastics world. And so that was why I developed this company called Wild Adventurous Life. And my whole premise is that in nature, we are incredibly connected to ourselves in ways that typically don't happen. And of course, there's all sorts of science around it and it's more and more prevalent and talked about. But, when you're out on the trail, it probably brings me more clarity and more flow and more of a meditative state than anything else. So I was like, there's something really powerful about this. And there's also something really powerful about doing something just a little bit scary, like meeting your edge on the trail, whether it's hiking, biking, skiing, whatever that looks like for you, jumping off a cliff, those actions teach you what you're capable of, even in the most smallest ways. Like, I didn't think I could get to the top of that mountain. And then I got there and I looked back and I was like, wow, that's how far I've come. And it's very analogous to obviously our work as humans to just keep growing and reaching new heights, if you will. So I developed this whole kind of company around the premise of adventure and wellness and leadership. And then I was so scared, like scared shitless on how to execute this idea. And I wanted to do a mastermind and no one knew what that meant. And it was just a little bit too big for me to understand how to execute it at the time.
So what exactly was the vision?
So the vision is exactly what my vision is today. I wanted to create a mastermind community for women, whether they were business owners or leaders in their worlds and their companies, whatever, to get together to learn and optimize health and wellness, leadership, business, wealth creation, community impact, community building, and the act of adventure. And when women adventure together, beautiful things happen. It is very, very different than, even a mixed group of men and women, or if you're the only girl, which is what has happened to me many, many times, is like the only girl that shows up on the mountain bike ride. And then when you kind of folly over, a rock garden, you just kind of look and be like, did anyone see it? Or no one's going to stop and be like, go do that again. You got this. You're okay. Like, it's just like, we just keep riding. We're going to ride as fast and as hard as we can. At least that's been my experience with women. Like, we're going to notice when someone dabs or when someone falls or whatever, and we're going to encourage her to do it again. And hopefully in a way that, boosts her confidence. And then once she does it, it's like, you did it. Like, it's fucking rad. Yeah.
So you mentioned that example. What are some of the other things that can really come from really getting women together in the same room or on the trail together?
Yeah. I mean, I've just come to realize that specifically women in the middle age era, which I've just heard scientifically can be described as age 35 to age 70. So it's a really big gap, but there's like a level of clarity that we have when we get to mid-age that allows us to say or midlife, sorry. When we get to midlife, it's like, I've kind of done it in other people's way. I've followed the rules. I think I can really see myself in this conversation, obviously based on everything I just said to you, but it's like, yeah, I did it everyone else's ways. And I followed the rule book. I wore the outfits. I did all the things and it still wasn't right for me. So how now can I just stand up and exclaim, no, this is actually who I am. And I don't really give a fuck what you think. And that's harder to do than it sounds. But now, I think women in midlife can do that with a little bit more grace and confidence than ever before.
So on a recent episode of the podcast, we did our masculinity roundtable discussion, which you helped me prep for. Thank you. Because you're really tapped into the female scene here. And I was a little concerned about how things would land. I did rub some people the wrong way. And so I'm just curious to ask you, or to clear up something, I suppose. You're kind of the leader of a movement here, to be honest, female entrepreneurs. You host a bunch of women's events. You have been for, over a decade through your various brands. This is not born out of an anti-man stance. It is more so pro-women, and we need to get women feeling confident and getting them together so that they can thrive in the ways that you've described.
Correct. Yes. For me, I wanted to create rooms where women could show up and feel confident and comfortable to be themselves and to learn. And so many of the events that I've created over the years were inspired by conversations that were happening in the dining room at LANEY LU. And you're right. I was thinking about this a couple of days ago because I have a new event that I'm, in the early stages of putting together. And I'm like, wow, I've done a lot of very different types of events, like storytelling to business to health and wellness to sexual health, on and on and on. And some have been independent to me. Some have been highlighting other women. Some have been gatherings. One of the most fun events I ever did was just called Bring a Badass. And all you had to do was just show up, but you had to bring someone with you. And I can remember and feel the energy in the room of that night like no other. It's just so special. And it was just a networking event, but people wanted to be there because they wanted to show off the person they brought. And I was like, that is so rad. That's the whole point for me, is like, how can we lift each other up?
Right. But it's not going back on the years in the corporate world. It's not, I was screwed by men and I want to get back.
No, 100%, which is why I said, like, I mean, I've mentioned sexual harassment in public spaces, but I've never told the stories. I don't hang my hat on that. Sometimes I feel like, gosh, I've got this platform, maybe I should. But then I ask myself, like, is it really going to matter? Like, I think really at the end of the day, I have a set of stories just like everybody else. We all have a set of stories and we're all informed by our past. What are we doing with those stories? And that, I think that's what really matters. And I'm hoping that my stories, I want to like lean into them more and more and more, because I'm hoping my stories will empower other women to lean into theirs. And sometimes that means we have to make some really tough decisions. And so, no, I love men. I have been married to men. I want to be with a man in the future. It's not about that, but it is about being willing to take up some space, and again, I think we can do beautiful things as women together. And I was also, like, not to go off into some crazy tangent, but I was the center of a lot of bullying as a kid. And so again, like, what's this unraveling? How can I connect the dots? How can I make it all make sense? And one of the biggest things that I want to do in my life is make sure people feel valued and seen. And then what can they do when they feel that? That's mostly what people need to be able to take this a step forward.
So were you not this boss babe moniker that people have labeled you with over the years? Was it not always that way? You did not carry yourself with that energy?
No, I think I did. I think that's why I was bullied. I just didn't understand it. Yeah. Like I've always been a natural born leader. But yeah, I'm the one that would like have the college party, the college rager. And like, I would bring in people from all different groups and just be like, you need to know them. Da, 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 da,
with mocktails and quinoa bowls, of course.
Of course. And then I would just sit back literally and just watch. And it's just brilliant. That's my favorite place to be.
I love it. A lot of that energy is very evident at Laney and Lu. Let's get into Laney and Lu. Okay. So I heard you, I believe, on the Portsmouth Chamber of Commerce, the podcast that they do. You said something that really caught my attention. You said that Laney and Lu ended up being a distraction from your wild, adventurous life business and that part of your life that you were creating. Take me into the Laney and Lu origin story and why it was a distraction for you.
Yeah. So I'd started this company. I was doing the bare minimum, I think, to just even justify having a company at the time. Because again, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I had a few clients and I was putting some programs together. I was already hosting events, which was fun, but I was consulting for corporate, still had my hand in the game there. And then I was walking to a meeting for one of my corporate gigs and I saw the for lease sign at Laney and Lu. And maybe it was one of the first times that I had ever had like a really strong download, as people in the spiritual world would say, but I saw it. I saw the people, I saw the food, I saw the aesthetics. And Laney and Lu, before I renovated it, that space was literally like the walls were painted black. The walls were painted like this weird lime green. It was a mess. In downtown Exeter. There were these weird like booth walls, half walls sort of separating the space. And for anyone that knows that space, they're probably like, how in the world did they do that? Because it was tiny. And yeah, so I was like, well, I've always thought maybe I'd have a coffee shop when I was retired and, sit at the windowsill and just watch the magic happen and sip coffee. It's crazy. But yeah. So then when the idea of Laney and Lu came around, it was really just okay, this will be a great spot for people to come in, not just at yoga for an hour, but to come in and nourish themselves and to create community. And then that community will be primed, if you will, for my mastermind. And I had a feeling that And I already knew there were exceptionally beautiful, strong, capable, talented people that were doing really epic things already in that community in Exeter, because those were the people that were coming to my classes. So I think the building blocks were all there. I just don't think I realized that people would love it so much.
Did people in your life, in your inner circle at this point, think you were losing your mind?
Oh my God. The number of people that were like, I mean, and just perfect strangers. It's like, I would be out because we bootstrapped the whole thing and did a lot of the work ourselves. And so at the time, I would be painting a piece of wood out in what became the patio, and perfect strangers would just walk up to me and be like, this is the worst idea ever. What are you going to have? I'm like, we're going to have turmeric lattes. They'd be like, I don't even know what a turmeric latte is, and nobody's going to buy it. I'm like, perfect. Thanks. Thanks for the vote of confidence.
Yeah. I mean, so 2014, 15 time.
Yep.
This is really revolutionary on the East Coast. Now, this stuff's been out in California for a while, but to bring it here, especially to New England, pretty revolutionary. So were you concerned that this area might just not be ready for it? Or did you think this area is ready for it? They just don't know it yet.
They just don't know it yet. Yeah. And I was doing some, little smoothie workshops here and there at yoga or whatever. Or my friends would come over and I would make them what's now like the chakra salad or the nori roll at LANEY LU. Like, I was kind of testing things on them to see and be like, wow, this is amazing. Like, oh, you haven't seen anything yet. Like, but also, like, I literally thought we were going to be a smoothie shop, but I love coffee and I love egg sandwiches. So it's just all kind of foolish and naive. I just was being super selfish. I'm like, I want to have some of these things here on the menu because this is what I'm looking for, but I'm not really expecting that anyone else is going to be seeking it out in any significant way. And so this will be sort of a side hustle that hopefully I can have a few people helping me with. But generally speaking, like, I can do it all. Of course, I can do it all. So I'll run the restaurant. I'll build the empire of wild, adventurous life. And I'll be on the cover of Outside Magazine in a year. Like, I just had these wild and crazy ideas and dreams. Yeah.
No real restaurant experience up until that point, right?
No. And when I was 22, it's kind of a sordid story, but I had gotten myself involved with a man that took advantage of me a little bit, like just a boyfriend that asked for some loans and whatever else. And I gave him some money and he didn't pay me back. And I was like, well, now I'm in trouble financially and I'm straight out of college. And so I had to get a second job. I'm like, he didn't get a job. I did. But whatever. So I got a second job working at a restaurant, and I worked for that company or that restaurant for 6 weeks. And it was the best 6 weeks ever. Like, I enjoyed it so much. And the only reason why I left is because I got a promotion and was invited to come down to Massachusetts for my real job. So I left the other one behind.
Every restaurant owner that I've talked to on this show has said, if they were giving advice to someone who wants to open a restaurant or a coffee shop, it's work in a restaurant or a coffee shop first, or like really spend some serious time behind the scenes to figure out A, whether you really want to do it, and B, to really learn the ins and outs of it. So what gave you the audacity to think that you would be able to run a food business?
I don't know. I mean, literally, I think it was my crazy 8.5 by 11 business plan, which was literally an Excel spreadsheet, January through December on the top line. And then down was like, okay, I'm going to make this much money. I'm going to take care of this many customers. Average sale will be $9 per customer. I kid you not. This was the simplicity of it. And I will have to pay for rags and cleaning supplies and this and that. And here's my rent. And yeah, I think I can do it if I have 30 customers. Sure. And it's just like asinine. I remember this guy that was helping me just do a little bit of mentorship. He is a mentor through the Small Business Development Center. And he took one look at that plan and he was like, we are in so much trouble. That's all he said. He's like, you're going to be slinging free smoothies on the sidewalk in front of Exeter because A, nobody is going to know what you're talking about. Turmeric lattes and fat coffee and all this stuff. Like, no one's going to come in, and you're going to have to get them in here some way, shape, or form. And thank God the first day we opened, 100 people showed up, and it was like off to the races from there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Coming up, why LANEY LU takes off, despite the mistakes Jen makes while building one of the Seacoast's most beloved brands. That's in a moment. But first, there's another wonderful Jen on the Seacoast, and her name is Jen Backus. She's a photographer in the area. She has been for 15 years, and she's equally enthusiastic about small business, which is why we are so excited to partner with her. She loves taking photos for small business owners, especially in the hospitality space. Jen's reputation is pristine. Her clients rave about how easy she is to work with, her client care, the passion she displays for her work, the speediness with which she delivers her final products, and last but not least, the quality of her photos. Jen leaves no stones unturned, and it's a big reason why she's become one of the most sought-after photographers on the Seacoast. If you're a small business owner, Jen wants to work with you. And just for Seacoast Stories listeners, Jen is offering a sweet deal. If you tell Jen you're a fan of the show by sending her a direct message at Jen Backus Photo on Instagram, she will give you 10% off your first photo shoot. That's 10% off your first session by DMing JENNBAKOS Photo on Instagram. Refresh your headshots, update your old website, polish your social media, and I promise you, you will not regret when you work with Jen Backus. Thank you, Jen, for supporting the show. And now back to Jen Wilder, who explains why Laney and Lu quickly becomes a fan favorite. Why do you think it was received so well so quickly?
I don't really know. I would like to think that people just felt the energy of it. One of the things that I had on the signage, a lot of people walked by this storefront, but it was kind of a loser location. They had 3 failed businesses and 1 failed restaurant before us. And, but a lot of foot traffic, and my signs on every window was, "Are you hungry for something new?" And the only thing that we would talk about in our social media before we opened was community. It's like, this is the place you want to be. This is where your friend's going to be. This is where you're going to meet the next thing in your life, whatever. And just trying to say that it's not about the food. And we latched on to our mission and core values well before we opened. It's probably the best thing that I ever did. And I think that that's what people attach themselves to.
I love that, because I didn't really hear the word community talked about in the way that we talk about it now, really until COVID and post-COVID. So to be talking about it in 2015 as part of your marketing message is really forward thinking.
Thank you. Yeah. So like some of the deeper, like our mission statement is always obviously just one sentence, but it ends with build community. So it's like serve amazing food, nourish your body, and build community. And so that was always really at the end of the day. It could have just been build community. But yeah, like taking it further, we talked about how this was the place for the neighbor, the business owner, the leader, the community activist, the whatever, to come together and feel valued and seen. And so that was our only thing. That would what I would coach the kids with every day. It's like, how can we make sure people feel valued and seen? And ultimately, how can I make you feel valued and seen so you want to be a part of it? And that's really where it comes down to. So like when you had the conversation with Bill and Bennett about the fitness world, I'm like, yes, because that's exactly what I wanted to create. Everyone told me, maybe not everyone, 7 out of 10 people told me before I opened Laney and Lu that people are they're going to be in and out of your business in a heartbeat. They're going to steal from you. They're going to lie. They're not going to show up. They're going to do all these things. They'll never love it like you do. All this negativity, like we're not like, the world is not this, well, maybe it's not great now, but like our community is made up of really lovely, loving people. And I just totally disagree with you that it's going to be this hellacious experience. And so I made a commitment before we even opened. I'm like, I'm going to do whatever I can to create the culture and in the environment that I was looking for back in my corporate days. So yeah, I can't necessarily pay, the salaries and the whatever else that I would love to be able to pay, but I'm going to pay the best possible salaries and hourly rates that the industry can afford. And I think those types of things are really important to me, and create an environment where you feel safe to be you.
If you could deliver a message to perhaps those of you who doubted you, who were taking a look at the spreadsheet and said, this will never work, or the guy who passed you on the street and said this was a dumb idea, what would you say to those people?
I would ask them if they've been in yet.
I would sure hope so.
Yeah. I always try to get people in, like, just come check it out. I know it might feel like it's not your thing, but man, we spend a lot of time making sure that, we don't feel exclusive, right? That doesn't matter what your story is, your affiliations, your whatever, the things that you would call yourself, just come in, because I guarantee our food's going to make you feel good. We have this whole thing around the guest experience, but it's got a bunch of, sort of spokes off the hub of guest experience. And my most favorite spoke is the afterward. Like, how do you feel after? If in 30 minutes you've got a little bit of a pep in your step and your body's feeling good or you're smiling, then I've done my part. And that's going to make you want to come back again.
Now, you had said that you just expected this to be a side thing for your main thing of Wild Adventurous Life and hosting awesome events and masterminds and such. So that just kind of fell by the wayside for a few years, right?
Yeah, I would always talk about Wild Adventurous Life. I held on to that idea for so long. So anytime I did any sort of event, so like I remember it was a fermented beverages workshop. We did the craziest things. I was like, oh, that sounds cool. You're doing an awesome thing. Why don't you come and collaborate? We'll do something. We did like a 3-part series on how to have a home garden, and we packed the house like 40 people every time in this little tiny space in Exeter. It was ridiculous, to the point where then I was like, we need to go to 3S Art Space. And we did some really cool storytelling events at Liar's Bench. And I just like so many great memories. It's been fun. I don't know what's made me think about these events over the last week or so, but a lot of good memories come up for me. And I remember the first 200-person event I had at 3S, and I was like, yes, this is where I belong. And so what I would end up doing is just coaching in the dining room. So like business coaching or lifestyle coaching. So women would come up all the time and be like, can I have a cup of coffee with you? I'd be like, sure. When? Now? I'm like, okay. So we would do all these impromptu coaching sessions, like right there in the dining room. And sometimes they'd be 5 minutes long and sometimes they'd be 2 hours long, but we'd work through a business problem or a relationship problem or a mindset problem. And that's what really, really lights me up. I love LANEY and Lu. Never, ever take back doing that business. It has made me a better business person. And the lessons are plenty. But having the opportunity to have the landscape of the dining room, like that's where my life has happened, actually. It's really, really quite interesting. And I can see them now, like the number of businesses that have been created in the dining room, collaborations, ideas, relationships born, friendships born, things like that. Like that warms my heart to be like, wow, that is very cool that people want to do those things here.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's during this time when you're having those one-on-ones that the Jen personal brand really starts to take off, and you really become a leader and a thought leader and a source of inspiration for people on the Seacoast. Why do you think all of these people wanted to come to you and get your help and your guidance?
Gosh, I don't even know. I mean, it seems kind of funny that was all happening. It's not something that was purposeful. It just was sort of naturally happening. Because I think what was happening with me is in the background, I was beating myself up for not growing the business fast enough, not being able to grow Wild Adventurous Life. Like I should be doing more. I should be showing up on social. It's all the shoulds. Like, and my coaches were saying like, chill the fuck out. Your 750 square foot restaurant is doing 1.5 million. Like, no wonder you don't have time. Like, you're learning at such a fast rate. Like, give yourself a break. So I don't really know why that happened. I would just like to think that it's that feeling of like, you can come as you are, and that's okay. And it's not easy, and it's not beautiful sometimes, and it's not perfect. But if I can, I want to reflect to you what you're capable of and what you've already done.
Before you made the transition to this new life of yours, you said you were feeling out of alignment as you were a few years into this new life of yours, building LANEY and Lu and becoming a real leader in the area. How were you feeling internally after making that big change and, wishing the old life away?
Yeah. It's interesting. I wouldn't necessarily say wishing the old life away. It's just more like I needed to come to terms with it. I needed to understand why did it happen? What am I supposed to get from it? What are the lessons and things that I can put into place now that will make me a better, leader, business owner, partner, et cetera. And so that's kind of maybe more what I was thinking and trying to make sense of the progression of my life. I've been told I'm obviously very sensitive, but I've been told that I tend to overthink things, and I'm okay with that. I really want to figure it out so I can learn, grow, and keep going. Some interesting things happened. I think that not expecting LANEY and Lu to be what it is, it definitely, it was the loud, I don't know, how do you say it? It was the loudest thing in my life. It needed and deserved so much of my attention. So yeah, I worked every single day for the first year, almost every single day for the second year. And I don't think it was because I couldn't let go. I just couldn't let go. It just was moving at such a pace, and not knowing what I was doing really demanded a lot of my own time and attention and whatever else. So I made a lot of mistakes. And I think what ultimately started happening is I realized very early on that LANEY and Lu has a lot of legs. So then I became really focused on how do I grow this thing? Because now that I've created it and we're beating every single industry metric out of the water, then aren't I not a fool to grow it? And, one of the beautiful things about being in Exeter is you get people from all over the world in your business. And so they, because they're PEA parents. And so these PEA parents would be like, I'm from whatever, Dallas, Manhattan, LA, Moscow, Paris. I can't find this. I come all the way to Exeter. Yeah, I want to see my kid. But after I see my kid, I want to come to LANEY and Lu. And it just was so affirming. Be like, whoa, okay, this is unique. And I don't think I ever appreciated it when we were building the concept, how unique all the parts are. And that's actually a really cool thing when someone can create. It's not really a unicorn in the sense of, I think unicorns really qualify if they're $1 billion brands or something like that. But in its own way, it's a unicorn brand that feels like to me deserves time and attention and deserves to grow.
What's PEA?
Oh, sorry, Phillips Exeter Academy. Yep.
Something a true local would know. I didn't know that. Okay, so I'm curious to ask. So you said that LANEY and Lu, well, it's doing so well, we just have to grow it. But internally, knowing that you had these other ambitions, is that really what your heart wanted? No, I don't think it was actually. I don't think it was. And so probably for the so now we just celebrated 10 years in September, and I've spent a lot of, especially the last 12 months, really digging into, okay, I got really sucked up into the momentum of this brand. Clearly we've made some other moves, and I was like, well, I'm in hospitality. I can do hospitality. And so now, I would say that I'm in the point now where I'm like, okay, time to get really honest. What do you actually want? And what does that look like? And I'm very much in that place now, because I do think that there were times when I would say, I'm kind of bummed that I didn't do Wild Adventurous Life. I got to a point where maybe Wild Adventurous Life was hosting the events and things like that, but that was my very futile, attempt to keep the brand at the forefront of people's mind, because I was like, I'll get there. And then I just frankly never got there. And so is that a failure? I don't think so. I think it's an evolution. And now I'm like, okay, I'm willing to put that brand aside. And I sort of created Altitude as the next generation of that company. But even now, it's Altitude came around in 22. Now here we are in 25. Even now, I'm like, I think it's time that even Altitude doesn't really fit. It's it fits the hospitality brands. It doesn't necessarily really fit and represent me. And so now there's been this unfurling of who is Jennifer and how can she show up as fully as herself. And my brands can do themselves now. I don't really need to be my brands. You know what I mean? They're living, breathing entities. And that's a beautiful place to be. Lasting on the LANEY and Lu early days, you mentioned mistakes made. what were some of these mistakes, or do you have any regrets from this time?
I do. I do. I don't know if regret's the right word, but yeah, I made some very serious mistakes. I think I allowed people to underperform in my business for far too long. I think that I hired people in that I thought were capable of living and bringing forth the mission and the vision for the company in a way that was in alignment with me. And then I proceeded to watch them either do the bare minimum or just flounder. And so rather than me being strong enough to hold them accountable to that, I would just be like, they're a good person. They're going to figure it out. It's going to come together. And then I would sit with that person for probably far too long. And that's fear. And that's fear of like, well, this thing is so big. Like I need the help. I can't be all things to all people in this business. Like, and then just really realizing like, okay, this, I don't know, need to be nice. This need to be friends with everyone is not really serving me or serving the business as best as it should. So those were tough lessons. And I think I also, I've talked about this story a few times, but I attracted someone into my business very early on that wanted to help me grow LANEY Lu. And he also completely underperformed and I had to claw my business back from him. And I'm glad that I did, but it cost me tens and tens of thousands of dollars. And I can think of those hits all the way through till, this year that have cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars. And does that make me less successful? I feel like the answer to that is no. I think it just means that I've put myself out there. I've taken big risks. I haven't made the right decisions always, but I'm better ultimately for it.
Yeah. I mean, when you start building something meaningful and successful, there's people who want to be a part of it. And it can be difficult to parse out who's for real and who's not. So, I mean, that's probably a lesson that you probably needed to learn. In hindsight, probably best that you learned it early.
Yes. Yeah. And I was listening to the story of the Real. Now I'm forgetting her name, but she just launched a book and she talks about how she did this in her business and she has $1 billion online brand. So I'm like, okay, I don't feel so bad now. Like I do think as women, it's very difficult for us to set boundaries and set expectations and be very firm on them. We want everyone to be successful and all the things. And I have been told that my expectations are too high, my standards are too high, that I need to like dull it down for people. I'm too much, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think now I've become more clear in the last year. I was like, actually, no. I'm going to be way more protective around, this is actually where we're going. This is what's required. If you're in, fantastic. I'll do my best to compensate you as much as I can for that. But I'm going to surround myself with the people that really want to move this business or these businesses forward.
Why do people say you're too much?
I don't know. A lot of feelings, a lot of goals, a lot of tenacity.
That all sounds great to me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I don't know. We'll have to go ask them.
Okay, I will. I'll track them down. Let's talk about the evolution of the brand. So LANEY Lu sitting pretty, doing well for a couple of years in Exeter. Then eventually a few more brands make their way into your life. There's Palette, there's Ginger Fox, and then LANEY Lu Portsmouth opens up as well. Take me through the evolution of those businesses. Why did you want to start expanding upon LANEY Lu?
I wanted to grow LANEY Lu pretty quickly once I saw what it was capable of. And a lot of that was other people sort of affirming to me like, hey, in order for you to really make money in this industry, you've got to have multiples. And the trick is, can you get to 3 or 5 by self-funding? And how quickly can you do it? So we started looking at other locations pretty quickly. And I was kicking all sorts of tires. And I'm sure my realtor was probably thoroughly annoyed by me because I would just walk in, I would sort of intuitively feel the space and be like, nope, not for us. And I don't know, we probably looked at 36 spaces. It's hard to say. And we'd get down the road sometimes and the deal would fall apart and you wouldn't be able to see why, but it did. And then it's just like anything, right? COVID happens and everything changes. And I was actually negotiating on a space downtown that I think would have been absolutely amazing. And now it's a jewelry store, which is fine. But, it's like sometimes I walk by and I'm like, oh, this is where I was supposed to be. But COVID really changed the landscape of what was possible for the brand. And when the guys from, West End Yards came knocking, they had knocked before, and I had said I was a hard no. I'm like, I don't think anyone wants to be out here. It's too far. It's on the edges, too far on the edges. And I just think I'll have to work too hard to get people there. And I was really focused on being in the city. So when COVID happened, I changed my mind. It took them a while to change my mind, but I did because I saw something different in people, right? People, their habits are still incredibly formulated by the COVID experience. How do they want to sit? How do they want to order? How do they want to pick up? How do they want to park? The people don't do well with a lot of resistance, I feel like, when it comes to hospitality. So I would say both Ginger Fox and Laney and Lou really do a good job with keeping the resistance level really low. You can get in and out pretty easily. And I think that helps people in the West End Yards. You're never going to look for a parking lot or a parking space in the parking lot.
Right. Interesting to hear you say that you had a lot of resistance to the West End Yard spot. Yeah. Probably when you were first approached about it. Yeah. It was, West End Yards that area wasn't really built out yet. So hard for you to imagine.
Yes. Yeah. They just had the 20-page pitch deck on this. These are the apartments, the townhouses. This is what it's going to look like. This is where we're going. And these are the types of businesses we're going to attract into it. And as I kind of went through the process, I got really amped up about it. I was like, oh, wait, I wasn't going to put a Laney and Lou in there though. I was going to create a sister brand. Oh. And actually, I don't know if I've ever talked about this too publicly, but I was going to call it Base Camp. And I just had this vision of this is going to be where active, healthy, vibrant people want to hang. Just like Laney and Lou, but like one big step up.
A food spot?
A food spot.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was going to be full service with a lot of capability for grab and go, that sort of ease in and out. So it would have sort of multiple ways of doing business with us, strong reliance on technology, but still very people forward. I had the menu all mapped out and probably still would have been the healthiest place in town. And then I just got nervous when essentially the tenant mix at West End Yard shifted. It was meant to be a whole row of like 8 different, F45 was one, but then, some other studios and clothing stores, et cetera. And when that all shifted and it went to office space, I was like, nope, I'm not going to do it.
Not for Base Camp.
Too risky, not for Base Camp. I don't think I could put a new brand in here that no one's ever heard of at the square footage that I want to put it in at. And because it would have been giant, it was 5,000 square feet. And we have 2,600 square feet now.
Yeah.
So I was like, too risky. I'm not going to do it. What do you guys think about a Laney and Lou? And then within like 3 days, we had like, boom.
Oh, wow.
Change gears, go forward. We're doing a Laney and Lou.
And in hindsight, with Laney and Lou being where it is now in West End Yards and it not being where the jewelry store is, are you content with that?
I am. I do ask myself, I wonder what we could have done, because there are still a whole bunch of people that don't know where we are. And they're not driving by us, or if they do, it's a little complicated in that corner. It's not quite as streamlined traffic wise as maybe I had thought. But I think people are figuring it out. And I think the closure of Exeter was a great catalyst for people that loved the brand to come and experience Portsmouth. And then they go, oh, I get it. So there aren't very many people that say, I don't get it. Like Exeter was better. Now, maybe Exeter was better in some ways. It's homey. It's small. It was intimate. And it was scrappy AF. But Portsmouth is polished, and we've really figured out a lot of things operationally that either works for people or it doesn't. But from a business perspective, it's been way better for us. And it was nice to see, a big contingent of those Exeter people come over to see us.
Let me say it loud and clear for the audience. Laney and Lou is in West End Yards in Portsmouth. It's next to the F45. There's a Buffalo Wild Wings around the corner. You can't miss it. Big Laney and Lou sign. It is absolutely one of my favorite places in town. It's my go-to spot for Seacoast Stories related meetings, great Wi-Fi, the great vibes, and then of course all the great foods that you know and love from Exeter. So go check it out, people.
Oh, so sweet. Thank you.
All right. So that's Laney and Lou Portsmouth, Laney and Lou Exeter. You made the decision to close Laney and Lou Exeter earlier this year. Why did you come to that decision? Next time on Seacoast Stories.
I was let down by my contractor in a really big way. It cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave Seacoast Stories a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you're coming to Dinner Club on Wednesday in Exeter, I'll see you then. Otherwise, have a great week, everybody. I'll talk to you soon. Live free or die.